I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are continuing in the Gospels, and we are right near the end of Christ's ministry. The last few days. We read about the triumphal entry, and that was a few days before the Passover, and that is when Christ will be arrested. But we are in that period between the two, between the triumphal entry and the Passover. And we've had a lot of things, he cursed the fig tree, cleansed the temple, been teaching a few parables. And now we're going to read again in Matthew this time. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then saith he to his servants, The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways, and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. And he saith unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither, not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. This is another parable about the last days and the second coming. It is known as the Parable of the King's Son's Wedding. Nice long title. But there's a lot of cultural stuff going on here. There was a conference talk that talked about this parable and gave a lot of good details about what it is. And the basics of it, first of all, the first half, where those who are bidden to come, that's the Israelites. Those are the ones, the chosen people, the people of the covenant. But they don't want to come. They're all, I'm going to go over here. Some of them are violent. Some of them are killing his servants. You can see the different reactions of Israel. Some are just indifferent. Some are actively rebelling. And they are destroyed. And again, Israel will be destroyed again in 70 AD when the Romans come through and sack the city. But then he calls in, he says, Go out to the highways and bring in everybody. And so the servants do. Both good and bad. This is the gospel going to the Gentiles. And it is largely the last days where we gather everybody. Today, they're not being too selective in who is baptized. There used to be in the early Christian church 2,000 years ago, and I'm not talking about in the New Testament time, but shortly after, it was like the 2nd century. Sometimes people had to wait like 2 years before they received baptism because they had to prove themselves worthy. They had to prove that they were willing to commit. In the early days in these early last days with Joseph Smith and people, largely after they got to Utah, they started having you have to have a certain amount of time before you could be baptized, usually a month or so, show your dedication. And even when I was younger, back in the 80s and early 90s, you would get baptized one week, but you wouldn't get confirmed until the following Sunday, because you were baptized and then you had to demonstrate your commitment during that next week before you could be confirmed and given the Holy Ghost. That was the standard practice. Today it's baptize, confirm on the same day. The missionary lessons are not as dense, they're not as long. They don't require, it used to be you'd start the missionary lessons and you'd have to wait about 6 months, go through all these lessons before you could get baptized. Now you don't have to wait as long. And so we're bringing everybody in. And the purpose of this is to make sure we get everybody who really needs to be here. But that's what he means by going out to the highways and just gathering everybody they can find. He says good or bad, doesn't matter, just bring them in. But then the king comes, and this is the second coming. And he surveys everybody, and there's a man who is not wearing the wedding garment. Now the wedding garment, as was explained in the conference talk, is when everybody is brought to the wedding, the host or the king would have given everybody a set of clothing that would have been the same. So that no matter what station in life you are, and whether you're a noble or a peasant, all the guests are equal at the feast because they all wear the same clothing. They all have kind of the wedding uniform. It is the wedding garment. And if you are not wearing the garment, then either you did not come in the proper way through the gate where you would receive the garment, but snuck in some other way, and therefore are not a lawful guest, or you are willfully rebelling against the king and saying, I refuse to submit to that custom. Either way, you will be thrown, those will be cast out. Now, I know, growing up, I always thought the wedding garment was an allusion to the temple garment. And in some ways it is, quite honestly. And those who tell us, oh, you don't need to wear the temple garment, it's just a suggestion, you might say. It's not a requirement. We shouldn't be required to wear it. Those are the guests at the wedding feast who, when Christ comes, they will not be wearing the wedding garment. But there are others who, even though they're wearing the temple garment, will not be wearing the wedding garment. As it says at the end there, many are called, but few chosen. Many are being brought into the gospel. Many are being baptized. But among those, it is still relatively few who will receive the highest glory. But I'm rambling a bit now, and I'm not even sure I'm making sense. So let us turn to the Joseph Smith translation. Verse 1 now says, And Jesus answered the people again, and spake unto them in parables. Verse 2, we change which to who in that last clause. In verse 3, we now have the opening. And when the marriage was ready, he sent forth his servants. Verse 4 has a number of corrections here, so it now reads, Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them that are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my oxen, and fatlings have been killed, and my dinner is ready, and all things are prepared. Therefore come unto the marriage. Clarifications, nothing serious. Verse 5, we now, instead of made light of it, it is made light of the servants, and went their ways, one to his farm, and another to his merchandise. Then verse 7, now we have this. But when the king heard that his servants were dead, he was wroth. In verse 8, saith is changed to said, and which to who. Verse 11 and is but. So but when the king came in, he saw there a man who had not a wedding garment. Verse 12 changes saith to said. Verse 13, then said the king unto his servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take and cast him away into outer darkness. And then verse 14 is now, For many are called, but few chosen, wherefore all do not have on the wedding garment. So not everyone in the church is counted as having the wedding garment. And in the last days, Christ will cast out those who are not wearing it. I'm going to leave that here, and we continue in our next several videos. We will be reading many combined stories in multiple gospels, so I will see you there.